You know, back when I was a kid, the old song, Home on the Range, really spoke to me a lot. I grew up in the city, and the idea of being able to go out into the wide open spaces and see the animals, the deers and the antelope and the buffalo roam, it sounded fantastic to me. And having the opportunity to move up to Alaska and living here, being able to go out into the wilderness areas where the moose and the deer and the grizzly bears roam, well, you know what? I've loved it. I've loved every minute of it. But I've been wrestling lately, like in the last couple of years or so, with this idea of ownership. When you've got wilderness that nobody has any, clear ownership of, and yet you have these government agencies that are basically claim ownership. They don't do any improvements to the land. They don't allow basically any improvements to be made to the land. They just keep it blocked off from people being able to use it, people being able to go out there and make anything of value in it. They do allow people to go out and hunt or fish, or, they do give permits from time to time for certain activities like mining or logging or what have you. But generally speaking, when you have all of this land that's locked up and somebody claiming that they own it, I have a problem with it. And part of the reason I have a problem with it, because, if you take it back far enough in terms of who actually owns the land, what do we do with the indigenous people that lived here before the United States, quote, purchased Alaska from Russia? Russia didn't have any claim on the land other than that they had fished and hunted and logged along the coast. What about all of the people that were living inland? There are, hundreds of indigenous tribes that live here in Alaska, and 41 different corporations, something like that. You think about all these different peoples, all these different individual villages where their ancestors lived here. They made a living here. They I think, have a greater claim on the land in terms of, you look at the history and you look at the improvements made to the land and you look at the actual, you remember that whole idea of first come, first serve? That's what ownership is all about. If you're the first one on scene to an unowned resource, and you go out and you lay some kind of claim to it, and you start making improvements on it, and you live there, and you raise your family there, and somebody else moves in and says, no, I'm sorry, this is now my land, by virtue of the fact that I have planted my magical piece of cloth on this land. By virtue of this flag, now you must serve us because we now own this land. This debate is coming up in a parliament in Canada right now, as they're celebrating Canada Day. Some indigenous tribes, some protesters went and set up a teepee outside the parliament building, just to remind the folks there in Canada that, hello, colonialism is dead. Perhaps it's time to stop living as if this country and all of the people who live here are your subjects of some vast colony. I would argue the same thing for Alaska. We've been treated like a colony from the very beginning, going all the way back to the days when fish was the main industry, fishing along the coast, the canneries. Then there was logging. There was mining. I mean, oh my goodness, look at all the gold rush stuff. The people coming from the Yukon up into Alaska. The very town I live in, Fairbanks, was founded only by accident because of gold. It doesn't make any sense for a city to exist here, to be quite honest with you. And then there's oil. In each one of these cases, people from outside come in, take the resources out. They haven't done anything to develop the resources here in state. The fish gets taken out. Boom. It may be canned before it's shipped out, but it's always shipped out. Nowadays, most of the stuff even happens on boats. The fish is just processed, boom, right there on the boat on its way back to Seattle. Logging has been virtually shut down in the state of Alaska thanks to our masters 3,000 miles away. And then you look at, the fur trade doesn't really exist anymore. What about gold? Well, how much of it has stayed in Alaska? Oh, yeah, that's right. None, or virtually none. Most of it, the vast majority of it, 90-some% of it, has been shipped out of Alaska. Same with the oil. We are a colony. And to look at what's happened in Canada this week with the protesters setting up a teepee and getting arrested for it. Well, they didn't hurt anybody, did they? What exactly did they do wrong that they should be arrested for making a protest by setting up a teepee? Oh, I believe they were trespassing. Think about that for just a minute. That's my 2 cents. You want to engage me on the topic, send me an email, steve@radiofreespeech.com.